I can't pinpoint the moment her love for me faded. Maybe it was a gradual decline, so slow and subtle that I didn't realize what was happening, like a light dimming until, suddenly, I was left in complete darkness. Or maybe it happened all at once, a split-second choice, a quiet turning away that I was too oblivious to catch. Regardless, by the time she finally voiced it, her heart was already gone. I want to be free. That's what Emily said one night as we sat parked in our driveway. The car was silent, engine off, the only sound the soft clicks of the metal cooling down. It was late, well past midnight, one of those nights when the world feels unnervingly still, like it's holding its breath. I looked at her, trying to absorb what she had just told me. But all I noticed was how the street lamp outside cast faint, moving shadows across her face. Free from what? I asked, though a part of me already knew. She sighed, lifting her hands to her temples as if fighting a migraine. From this. From us. I need to understand who I am without you. Her words were void of emotion, no pain, no frustration, just a chilly calm that made my insides twist. We had spent 8 years together, 5 of them married. She had been my closest friend, my confidant, my entire world. But in that moment, her tone was no different than someone deciding to toss out something old and no longer useful. A lump rose in my throat, but I worked to keep my voice level. Have I been holding you back? Her pause told me everything I needed before she even responded. I don't know. I just feel like I missed out. I need space to explore. That word, explore, hung between us like a threat wrapped in politeness, and I understood exactly what it meant. Still, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't plead. I just nodded, eyes fixed on the dashboard. So, what happens now? I asked. I think we should take a break, she answered. Not divorce, just some space. It was such a tired, predictable line that I almost laughed. She wasn't ready to completely sever the connection, just enough to see what else might be waiting beyond us. And if the outside world didn't offer anything better, she'd keep the door open to return. I should have pushed back, demanded clarity. But honestly, I was drained. Emily had withdrawn before, many times, though this was the first time she had said it out loud. Maybe deep down, I had always sensed it. So, I let her go. The next morning, she filled a suitcase, gave me a faint, uncertain smile, like she hoped I'd ask her to stay, and walked out. That single moment split my life into 2 parts, before and after. In the beginning, I unraveled. Food lost its appeal. Sleep eluded me. I clung to the hope that she just needed time to gain perspective and would eventually return. But weeks slipped into months, and while I was drowning in sorrow, Emily was out there finding herself. Or at least that's what she claimed. What she didn't say was that she had already moved on. I had become her backup plan, someone she could fall back on if her new reality didn't work out. She only looked back once the world turned out to be harsher than she had imagined. And by the time she came knocking again, everything had changed. What hit me first wasn't the silence, but the absence of the familiar noises she used to bring. The hum of her voice while brushing her hair. The soft patter of her slippers on the hardwood. The habit of leaving half-drunk coffee cups on the counter. Tiny details I had overlooked now shouted at me in the stillness. I tried coping the way anyone would. I buried myself in work, stayed longer at the office. I picked up my gym routine. I even went out with friends, pasting on a smile, pretending things were fine when they were anything but. But no matter where I went, I always returned to a house that felt emptier than before. To a bed that suddenly seemed far too large on one side. The hardest part? She never reached out. I told myself it was a good sign, that she was honoring the space she asked for. But deep down, I knew better. I wasn't on her mind. Still, I couldn't help it. I kept my phone close, checking it constantly for a message that never arrived. I'd imagine her pausing before typing something, having second thoughts, maybe remembering what we had. But as the days dragged on in silence, it became clear she had moved on. And then, one night, unable to sleep and staring at the ceiling, I gave in to the one thing I promised myself I wouldn't do. I opened her social media. I expected it to hurt. I knew it would. But the urge to know was too overwhelming. What I found shattered the little hope I had left. Emily wasn't on some quiet path to rediscover herself. She wasn't in meditation retreats or journaling in cafes. She was out, dressed up, laughing in bars, surrounded by new faces, living a life she had never seemed interested in when we were together. And then, in one photo, I saw him. His arm rested around her shoulders with a casual ease, as though he had always belonged there. As if they shared a long history, not just a few weeks of knowing each other. And the expression on her face, so lighthearted, so genuinely joyful, was unlike anything I had seen in a long time. It wasn't just a smile, it was the kind that came from a place of deep contentment. My chest tightened, and for the first time since she walked away, a spark of anger ignited beneath the layers of sorrow. It wasn't just about seeing her with someone else. I had already suspected she had moved on. It was the effortless way she seemed to have erased me from her life. While I had spent countless days caught in a cycle of hope, sadness, and confusion, she had seemingly closed the chapter without a backward glance. I tried to convince myself that maybe it was just temporary, a distraction, something she'd eventually grow tired of, that she might come back. But as I stared at the image on my screen, a shift occurred inside me. A quiet, painful clarity settled in. I realized I no longer wanted her to return, because if leaving me had been that easy, if replacing me had taken no more effort than switching plans, then perhaps she had never been the person I believed she was. For the first time in what felt like forever, I powered off my phone, and I began the process of releasing the grip she had on me. But life has a way of playing cruel jokes. Just when I was finally learning to breathe again without her, Emily made her reappearance. I had convinced myself that the silence between us was permanent, that after all the heartache she had left in her wake, I would never hear from her again. I had spent months trying to piece together the fragments of my life, trying to make peace with the void she left behind. Then, one evening, while doing something as mundane as folding my laundry, something I never used to do because Emily always insisted it was her job, claiming I'd only mess it up anyway, my phone lit up. Her name was on the screen. Emily. I froze, staring at it as though seeing a ghost. The last time we had communicated, it was a cold, quick exchange about forwarding her mail. Nothing personal. I had deleted our old messages, wiped clean the digital memories that once made me smile. I thought I had made it past the point where just seeing her name could shake me. Clearly, I hadn't. I let it ring out. I didn't answer. If she had something to say, she could leave a voicemail. I wasn't going to open the door so easily. Moments later, a message popped up. Hey, can we talk? 2 months. She had been silent for 2 months. I had watched from afar as she appeared to thrive, while I struggled to find steady ground again. And now, without warning, she wanted to talk? I turned off my phone. I wasn't ready to be pulled back into that chaos. But Emily had never been one to back down easily. Her messages began trickling in every few days. Some were short, just asking how I was. Others were vague, hinting at regret. I think I made a mistake. And then came the message that finally made me waver. I need to see you. Please. I can't explain why that one got to me. Maybe it was the simple word, please. Maybe it was the memory of her voice when she used to say it, soft and almost pleading. She had always known how to reach me in ways I didn't expect. So, against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a small, quiet cafe she used to love. I arrived early, not sure whether to appear distant or composed. I settled on a middle ground, casually drumming my fingers on the table as I waited. When she finally walked in, for a moment, time seemed to rewind. She was still unmistakably Emily, those same dark eyes, that familiar effortless way she moved. But as I looked closer, I noticed what I hadn't before. Her eyes looked weary, and she carried a nervousness in her posture. She took the seat across from me, fidgeting with her hands. Hey, she said softly, her voice quieter than I remembered. I gave her a small nod. I had no intention of making this comfortable. She looked down at her coffee, then slowly lifted her eyes to meet mine. I don't even know where to start. I didn't help her. I could have asked her directly why she was there, but I waited in silence. After a long pause, she sighed. I thought I knew what I wanted. I really did. But, I miss you. There it was. But inside, I felt nothing. Or maybe I just told myself I didn't. No, you don't miss me, I replied calmly. You miss what I gave you. Her eyes widened, but she didn't argue. I didn't realize what I had until she began. Until it was gone, I finished for her. I could have ended it there, gotten up and left her sitting with her cooling coffee and regrets. But something deep inside me still needed to hear it all. Tell me, I said, leaning back. What changed? You were so convinced you needed something different. She winced at the phrasing. I thought I needed to explore, to try living another way. Her fingers gripped her cup a little tighter. And I was wrong. She never came right out and said it. But the meaning was clear. Whatever excitement she thought she'd find had faded. The spark of a new life had dulled. She had learned the hard way that the fantasy wasn't better than reality. But here's what she didn't understand. I had changed, too. I wasn't the same man she had left behind. Have you ever had one of those moments where the person sitting across from you suddenly feels like a complete stranger? That was exactly how it felt when I saw Emily across the table at the coffee shop. She looked just the same, the woman I had loved for so many years, the partner I had built a life with. But whatever had once tied us together had vanished. And yet, she sat there, saying she missed me, telling me she had made a mistake. I let her words linger in the space between us, offering no immediate reply. I watched her squirm under the weight of silence. Not so long ago, I would have given anything to hear her say those words. I would have dropped everything, wrapped her in my arms, and brought her home without hesitation. But now, all I could feel was a faint, far-off ache. What changed? I finally asked, keeping my tone steady and even. She swallowed, her fingers tightening around her cup as she replied, because I realized what I had and what I lost. I leaned back slightly, observing her with measured calm. That's not really an answer, I said. Her jaw clenched, and I caught a flicker of emotion on her face, frustration, perhaps. She had always counted on me to make things easy, but not this time. Taking a deep breath, she admitted, I was foolish. I thought I needed to explore life on my own, that maybe I'd rushed into settling down. But I see now that I was mistaken. I exhaled slowly and gave a slight shake of my head. What really happened, Emily? What made you come back? She hesitated. That pause told me everything I needed to know. If her regret had been real, if she truly missed what we had, the words would have poured out effortlessly. Instead, she looked like someone trying to craft the perfect response, the one that would make me pity her. And suddenly, it hit me. I hadn't been her first choice. Or her second. I was the fallback. You met someone, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. Her eyes shifted, revealing something guilt or maybe shame. It didn't matter. That glance was all the confirmation I needed. She began, then sighed and ran a hand through her hair. I thought it was something meaningful. I laughed dryly. Let me guess. He didn't turn out to be the fantasy you imagined. She flinched. That was the answer, right there. It all became clear. She had left because she thought she was trading in our life for something better, something more exciting. Maybe she had already met him before she walked away. Maybe he filled her head with promises. But now, months later, reality had set in. The world outside wasn't as warm or inviting as she believed. The dream had cracked. And now she was crawling back, not out of love, not out of remorse, but because she craved the comfort she had walked away from. I looked at her, feeling something inside me shift, not sorrow, not heartbreak, but a quiet acceptance. That was when I knew. Emily and I were done. There would never be an us again. Because real love isn't a door you push open and slam shut whenever you please. It's not something you abandon, test out alternatives for, and return to once you're disillusioned. That's not love. That's not how I operate. She reached across the table, her fingers stretching toward mine. Can we try again? Can we fix this? I pulled my hand back. For the first time since she walked out of my life, I felt something close to peace. Emily, I said softly, there is no this anymore. Her expression crumbled. Once upon a time, I might have felt a pang of guilt. But not now. Not after everything. She had fought for her freedom, and now she had it. What's strange about moments like this, when the person who left finally realizes their mistake, is that they never unfold the way you imagined. I always thought that if Emily ever came back, if she regretted leaving, I'd feel like I'd won. Like her return would justify all the pain I had endured. But sitting there, watching her try to mend the damage with carefully chosen words, I felt nothing but fatigue. I had spent countless nights dissecting my actions, wondering where I had gone wrong, what flaw in me had driven her away. I'd stared at the ceiling, haunted by questions about who she was with and what she was doing. And just as I had begun to piece myself back together, she had the nerve to show up and ask for another chance. I don't understand, she murmured, her voice trembling as realization dawned. I wasn't going to give in. You used to say we were meant for each other, she added. You promised you'd never stop loving me. I ran a hand over my temples and let out a slow breath. Yeah, well, a lot has changed since then. Her eyes scanned my face, searching for a sign I wasn't serious. She had always been able to read me so easily. She could sense my mood from the way I moved, before I even spoke. But this time, she seemed unsure. You're not the same, she said in a hushed voice, like it had just dawned on her. I let out a short, humorless laugh. What did you think would happen, Emily? That I'd just sit around, waiting for you to change your mind? Her shoulders stiffened. That's not what I believed. Then what did you think would happen? I asked, leaning in slightly, my tone sharp. Did you really believe you could just walk away, chase after your thrill? and return when it didn't go as planned? That I'd be right here, ready to welcome you back with open arms? She paused, swallowing the lump in her throat. It wasn't like that, at least. That's what she wanted to believe. But was it really not like that? I could read it all over her face, the fear creeping in, the dawning understanding that the narrative she had imagined for this moment was falling apart. She had pictured a reunion filled with relief, where I'd be overjoyed just to have her back. She had assumed I'd be so desperate for her return that I'd forget the deafening silence that had stretched over months, that I'd overlook how easily she had discarded me, like I had just been a fleeting part of her life instead of her husband. But that version of me, the one who would have shattered at the sight of her crying, was gone. That man, the one who would have clung to her, pleaded for her to stay, and convinced himself that love could fix everything, no longer existed. I wasn't going to be her fallback, her second option. Emily inhaled sharply, her breath shaky as she reached for my hand once more. I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But please believe me, I never stopped loving you. I looked at her, my gaze steady, feeling a wave of disbelief rather than longing. You don't love me, Emily. You loved the life I gave you, the safety, the peace, the way I always put you first. I shook my head slowly. But love? No. Because if you had truly loved me, you wouldn't have left. Her lower lip quivered, and for the first time since she showed up, something genuine flickered in her expression. Not scheming, not acting, just pure regret. I could have said something cutting, something to remind her of every wound she'd inflicted. But there was no need. The weight of what she had lost was already pressing down on her. I picked up my jacket and rose to my feet. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Emily. She opened her mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to plead, but no words came out. And with that, I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving her alone with the consequences of her choices. For the first time in many months, I felt unburdened. I truly believed that was the final chapter. Walking away that day felt like shedding a heavy cloak I had worn for far too long. For the first time since her departure, I felt in control of my life again. But the thing about people like Emily? They rarely disappear quietly. It began subtly short messages. A simple, "Can we talk?" Or, "I just want to explain." I didn't respond. She had already said her piece, and I had given her my response. There was nothing more to discuss. Then the call started. I never answered, never listened to the voicemails. I let them pile up like forgotten echoes. And then, one night, just as I was getting used to the quiet and starting to appreciate it, she appeared. It was well past midnight. I was sprawled on my couch, barely paying attention to the television flickering in front of me, when a firm, persistent knock echoed through the apartment. I didn't need to check. I already knew who it was. I should have ignored it. Let her knock until she understood I wasn't coming. But curiosity has a way of overriding logic, and before I could talk myself out of it, I was opening the door. There she stood, Emily, no longer the self-assured woman who had left. Her hair was messy, her eyes worn out. For the first time, she seemed small. "Please," she murmured before I had the chance to speak. "Just give me a minute." I sighed, leaning my weight against the doorframe. "Emily, we've already had this conversation." She nodded quickly, as though she had anticipated my response. "I know. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know where else to go." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" Her hesitation only lasted a second before the truth slipped out. He left me. So that was it. Her little pursuit of freedom had collapsed. And with no one else to turn to, she came back to the only place that had once felt secure. Maybe I should have felt sorry for her. Maybe some part of me should have stirred. But there was nothing. "I'm sorry you're going through that," I said calmly. "But that's not my responsibility anymore." Her eyes widened, clearly not expecting that reaction. Maybe she still thought I was the same person she had walked away from, someone willing to sacrifice himself for her happiness. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "There's no one else I can go to." That might have been true. Maybe she had scorched every bridge on her way out and was only now discovering just how lonely it could be. But her reality was no longer mine. I had spent too many nights blaming myself, wondering what I had done wrong. But the truth was simple: she made her choice. And now, I was making mine. "You wanted freedom, Emily," I said with unwavering calm. "Now you have it." Her lips parted slightly, but nothing came out. I didn't wait for her to find words. I gently closed the door. And I didn't look back. Shutting that door should have closed the chapter for good. I should have been able to keep moving forward, to finally put Emily behind me, exactly where she belonged. But life rarely unfolds the way we hope. The following days slipped by quietly. No more texts lit up my phone. No unexpected calls interrupted my routine. The nights passed without knocks at the door. For the first time since she had re-entered my world, it seemed like the message had finally landed. She was gone, or so I thought. Then I began seeing her. At first, I chalked it up to pure coincidence. During a quick grocery run, there she was, at the end of the aisle, fixated on a can of soup as though it held the answer to some great mystery. When I stopped for coffee before heading to work, she'd be there too, a few tables over, absorbed in her phone while clearly pretending not to notice me. She even turned up at the gym, a place she never cared for before. But she wasn't exercising. In fact, she wasn't even dressed for it. She was simply present. She didn't cause a scene. There were no dramatic reappearances at my front door, no emotional pleas, no desperate attempts to rekindle what was gone. Still, she made sure to remain in my line of sight, just barely there, always lingering long enough to make sure I saw her. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe these run-ins were truly accidental. Maybe I was overthinking everything, letting paranoia get the best of me. That worked, until the night I glanced out my window and saw her standing on the opposite side of the street. She wasn't moving, wasn't speaking, just standing completely still, eyes locked on my apartment. My chest tightened, my breath caught. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just someone struggling to move on. This was something entirely different. I turned off the lights and stepped back, heart thudding in my chest. My mind scrambled through all the possibilities. Was she under the influence? Was she waiting for me to come outside? Did she expect me to acknowledge her presence? I couldn't tell. And frankly, I no longer cared. I refused to let myself get dragged back into her chaos. The next morning, I left earlier than usual, hoping she would eventually tire of this, hoping she'd lose interest and disappear. But when I reached my car, there was a note wedged under the windshield wiper. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible. It read, "You don't get to just erase me." I clenched my teeth, balling the note so tightly in my hand it crumpled instantly. This had nothing to do with affection or sorrow. This was about power, about control. And I wasn't about to play along. So, I did the one thing she likely didn't expect. I ignored it. I got into my car, drove to the office, and carried on with my day as though nothing had happened. Because if there was one truth I knew about Emily, it was that she fed on attention. And I wasn't going to give her a drop of it. But, in hindsight, I should have known it wouldn't end there. Silence only fueled her determination. Emily never accepted rejection well. She had always insisted on writing the ending of our story. She left when she chose to, on her own terms. She decided when it was over. And now that I was the one closing the chapter, she couldn't handle it. The notes didn't stop. They kept appearing short, cryptic, carefully worded to stir emotion. "I just want to talk. You can't pretend forever. Don't forget what we had." I never responded, never acknowledged a single one. Yet every note pulled her a little closer back into my orbit, like she was slowly reclaiming a place in my mind. Still, I didn't cave. I stood my ground. And then silence. No more messages. No more calls. No more notes on my car. She vanished. At first, I couldn't believe it. I kept waiting for her to return, for the silence to break with another knock in the night, for her to come up with a new reason to insert herself into my life. But days passed. Then weeks. Nothing. Just when I finally let myself believe it was over, an email arrived. It contained only one line. "I'm engaged." I stared at the screen, reading those words again and again. My first instinct was to laugh it off as a ploy, one last tactic to provoke a reaction. But then I saw the attached photo, Emily, smiling beside a man I didn't recognize, showing off a sparkling diamond ring. In that instant, everything made sense. It had never truly been about missing me. It had never been about sadness or trying to win me back. She simply couldn't stand the idea of me moving on. She needed to feel like she still had control, that she could have me again, if she chose to. And once she realized that was no longer possible, she found someone new. I expected anger. I anticipated some swell of emotion. But instead, I just shut my laptop. And then, after what felt like a lifetime, I laughed. Because finally, she was someone else's responsibility. And I was free.